as many as we possibly can. So without further ado, please put your hands together and let's welcome Mathew Modine.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good. Hello. What a good-looking crowd. I'm going to tell everybody back in New York, Texans are pretty handsome. You're probably all New Yorkers that moved to Texas. Queens in the house. It's getting, oh, there you go. I'm a Yankee fan, sorry.
All right, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Matthew, for coming here and showing these wonderful photos. And so we're going to go through, I'm just going to ask some questions, so we'll start some dialogue, and then we will take those questions, because I know everybody probably has a ton of things. To start out, a lot of people might not know that before you were acting, you were painting, and your father got you into watercolors.
Yes.
So how did your art world begin?
Well, as you said, my father, first I want to thank Michael Prentice and Michelle Bouchard for Michelle and I met on a train going to Washington, D.C. She was going to do something to help President Bush, and I was going to protest his inauguration. It was a good conversation, and it was an important conversation because of this polarity that exists in our country, how important it is. It magnified our friendship and cemented our friendship, because it shows how important it is to be able to talk to one another and to discuss difference of opinion. And if you keep your eyes open and your heart open and your ears open, it gives us all the opportunity to do what's right for our country and for each other. And so I thank Michelle for and so my father was a watercolorist, and he taught me composition and values in watercolors are translucent pigments, and so you have to learn about light when you paint with watercolors. And a friend of mine, Joseph Kelly, he was an amazing photographer from Kansas City, Missouri. And he had a Rolleiflex camera, and he knew about Stanley Kubrick's photography background. And he said that if you taught yourself how to use this camera, understand how it works, it could be a way to break the ice with Stanley Kubrick because of his photographic background and working for Look magazine. Incredible still photographer Stanley Kubrick was. And so I taught myself how to use the camera. I'm dyslexic, and the thing that's amazing about this camera, if you've never looked through one, it's a twin lens reflex camera that you look down through, right? And the thing that, and everything's kind of upside down and backward. So it sort of made sense of the world for somebody who sees things in a different sort of way. But the other thing about this camera is that it's not an object that's between you and the subject that you're taking. You know, when you take a photograph with a 35mm camera, even now with a cell phone, there's always kind of something between you and the subject that you're taking the picture of. And so this camera, when you hold it down, and the seriousness of the camera, the way that the camera looks, the weight of it, the two lenses, this black box, it's magical and it's powerful. And so when you take a photograph of somebody with this camera, they behave differently in front of it, because you sort of feel that there's this kind of thing that it's capturing. It's capturing a moment. There's which is poetic in itself. That for a moment, just think about your eyes and your pupils, and how everything that you've seen throughout your entire life, even these objects over here that I see peripherally through the sides of my eye, all that light is traveling into the lens of my eye, into my pupil, being processed by my brain and never escaping. Each of us kind of have black holes in our head. The whole universe is slipping into and never escaping and being interpreted by our brains. Why am I talking about this? It's your fault, man. You pulled it right out of me. So this camera, it kind of like that. It's kind of this magical thing that absorbs light and images, and then gets transferred to a piece of 2¼ by 2¼ inch celluloid. And the thing about each of the photographs and the negatives is as they sat in the box, I say they continued to develop, because when the image was captured, it had a certain significance, it had a certain meaning. But as the time passed, the images continued to develop. So this photograph in the back here of Stanley Kubrick's director's chair, when I took that photograph, I was with the prop master, a young kid named Danny, and we may have smoked some marijuana. I don't remember, but we may have. And I picked up Stanley's director chair and I put it on that chunk of concrete, and I thought it was funny. I thought this is a funny picture. I put, the chair too big for the chunk of concrete, kind of like Stanley's ego, too big for the world, and I took it. But as I say, it continued to develop and change and transform into something else, because now that chair is a chair that will never be filled again. That this was a man who came to this planet and, through the magic of his brilliance and his intelligence and his creativity and his imagination, imagined a world the way that he saw it. And it's very rare that a film director get the opportunity to tell a story the way that they perceive the world, the way that they see the world. And Stanley Kubrick is one of those rare filmmakers that had that power and that ability to present a story the way that he saw it. You see oftentimes today people put their name above the title of a film and say, they say a film by Joe Schmo. It's the most pretentious credit. I hate that credit, because if you ever watch the credits on a movie, you see that there are hundreds of people that are involved in the making of a film. And each of those people are so integral to the ability of the film to be made. So to say it's a film by me, did you write it, did you direct it, did you photograph, did you, all of those things. In the case of Stanley Kubrick, he never said a film by Stanley Kubrick, he said Stanley Kubrick's, possessive. That's different. That because of his singular vision. There's some gentlemen here that talk about how art and life coincide with one another. I'm so inspired by science fiction writers because they give us the ability and the opportunity to see things how they might be. So we take Jules Verne as an example, and how he wrote about traveling to the moon, right? He wrote a book about traveling 20,000 leagues beneath the sea. And within 100 years, we went to the moon. Within 50 years, 2 British explorers and kind of scientists, multifunctionary people, built a submarine and began to travel beneath the ocean, inspired by the creativity of a writer. So the reason I mention that is because in 2000, what's the name of the movie? 2001, A Space Odyssey. 2022, A Space Odyssey. Stanley Kubrick, if you watch the film again, the next time you sit down to watch it, he pre-visioned iPads. He pre-visioned FaceTime. If you watch the film, it still looks like a futuristic film. If you go look at Star Wars, you see the gadgetry. You look at it and think, how were you ever fooled to think that that those spaceships could have flown. Yeah, the 2001 A Space Odyssey still looks like something that is this future, this magical place. But what he created through his imagination and with the artists that he worked with to create that film, he has inspired NASA. He's inspired scientists and people that are curious about traveling through the universe to create a spacecraft and to be able to make something that could only exist in your imagination become science fact, not science fiction.
So you're a young actor being cast in a movie by Kubrick, somebody who is a visionary, and a friend says, take this camera,
Yeah.
and you'll impress him. Did you?
No. I taught myself how to use the camera. Oh, look, he's a beautiful singer. I'm sorry. Wow. She can sing like a bird. What's your name again? Thank you. I wish you all could hear her sing. She's so lovely. So I taught myself how to use the Rolleiflex camera, and we were in rehearsals, and I had it around my neck, and I was always kind of holding it and presenting it to Stanley Kubrick. You know, finally one day he looked at me and said, "What are you doing with that old piece of shit camera?" I said, "Piece of shit? This is a Rolleiflex camera." He goes, "Yeah, I know what it is." He said, "If you're going to take pictures on my set, you should get this new Minolta autofocus camera." And he told me all the lenses to get, what f-stops to get for them. He even told me what camera case to buy. And I hated this camera. I did it. I bought it. I couldn't afford it. I bought it. And it was really, you know, when you're pushing your finger, it was trying to find the focus, and it made a lot of noise. I would have never been able to photograph while we were filming because it would sound like R2-D2 on the set. But I felt, you know, I just loved this Rolleiflex. But the important part of that story right there is that he said, if you're going to take pictures on my set, which was unheard of on a Kubrick film, to document what was his, you know, Stanley Kubrick's film, he was allowing me, giving me permission to photograph his set. And that was just unprecedented. And there were the kids that were working on the film all snuck cameras. They hid cameras and took pictures. And if you have access to an iPad, if you can borrow someone's iPad, my book, Full Metal Jacket Diary, which was the diary you can see in that photograph there where I'm sitting, that's a selfie I did with the Rolleiflex. I kept a diary while I was making the film because I was playing a journalist, and I thought, you know, I'll be a journalist. I'll write down the things that are taking place. The thing that's wonderful about the Full Metal Jacket Diary, which there's only 20,000 of, it's a metal book and it has a serial number because I wanted to make a collector's item, is that it's the observations and the experience that a 24-year-old boy is having going off to work with arguably one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. And it's filled with my insecurities, my fears, my ambition, the birth of my son, the death of my manager, who'd been with me for the course of my career, Chernobyl, and the impact that Chernobyl had, and the fear that I had because my wife, they said, you shouldn't worry unless you're a nursing mother, because the radiation could get in the milk, and my wife was nursing our baby, so, but it's filled with all that stuff, and great stories, and I think pretty good humor, but now you can get it for $1.99, as an iPad app, and I will pat myself on the back and tell you that Steven Spielberg and Christopher Nolan were really impressed with the app because it's not like watching a documentary film, and it coined a new word, an appumentary. because it's a deeply immersive opportunity for you to interact with a documentary film that you're watching. So you can, as you're listening to the narration and the music and the sound effects that are in the app, you can open up the photographs and, open it up and like you do to open photos, and see details that you wouldn't otherwise be able to see if you were just watching a movie on TV. So you get to participate, and it's only $1.99. So,
if you do a search for Modine Full Metal Jacket Diary, it pops up. It's quite excellent and very interesting. And in the opening intro, you ended with a question about whether or not Stanley Kubrick was a genius. So, as a 24 young actor, was he a genius or was he a pain in the ass?
Both. I think most geniuses are. I think and it's not because they want to be a pain in the ass. I will tell you this, that Stanley never got angry at anybody that did their best. You could be an idiot, but if you did your best, how could you be angry at that person? You felt sorry for them because they weren't that bright, or that well skilled. But how could you? That would be cruel. And the one thing that Stanley wasn't was cruel, unless you didn't do your best, and then he'd rip your face off. I'll tell you this story because people have these in their imagination of what Stanley is. I love this picture of Stanley because that's the guy that I knew. You see, that's his daughter, by the way, Vivian Kubrick, who did the music for the film. She did a documentary, which is an amazing documentary about the making of The Shining. And she was only 15 years old, and she made that documentary. And so she started making one about Full Metal Jacket, and Stanley did something very naughty because he wants to keep things private. He got into her boxes and took all of the sound that she recorded and destroyed the sound because he didn't want people to know what he was saying. But yeah, that's the guy that I knew. Stanley, he was a jovial guy. He wore that jacket because this is important because of the practicality of this jacket. He had pockets here, pockets here, pockets here, pockets here. And he always kept a pad and a pen. And he says it's a sign of genius because you'll remember things, you'll have an idea, a great idea, and if you don't write it down, you often forget it. So always keep a pen and paper. So that's why I started keeping a pen and paper and keeping a diary, because he told me that was a sign of genius. So I've got one here in my coat pocket, and that kind of a pocket. I learned from the master. What were we talking about?
Well, I think we got what we were talking about. Yeah, I was going to ask you though, since you're talking about learning from the master, in the selection and the editing of the photos, how many photos did you take, do you think, over the course of the?
Probably about 150, something like that.
So in the...
It's 10 pictures on a roll. On a roll.
Yeah, some people take that much of their lunch these days. But in the editing down to the show and the photos you presented, how beholden did you feel to Kubrick and his vision in your work? Did you feel like you owed anything to
my photography?
Yes.
No, I know nothing to him for my photography. I owe it to my father for teaching me composition and the understanding of light, and Joe Kelly for giving me the camera. What I would give to Stanley credit for was for lighting. This picture of Vincent D'Onofrio, that the light that existed, that was Stanley's lighting. The ones in natural light. That's just natural light. It's something that you should know when we're making the film, that you'll notice when you watch the film next time, anything that's not interior is lit or natural light or fire. There are not any lights on the movie. If you can see the windows reflecting on the ceiling. All the windows. He wasn't interested what was happening outside the barracks, so he put, it's called an opal. It's a translucent piece of paper so light can come through, but it obliterates what's happening outside. So it looks like frosted glass. And so what you do is go outside of that and you put the lights. If it was middle of the day or it was the morning, you could adjust the number of lights that were on. But the scene is really lit by the fluorescents that are in the ceiling and by the light that's coming in from outdoors. So there was no lighting package that slowed things down to light people. The light existed as it was. So I owe that to Stanley.
Can I ask a technical question
No.
on that line?
No.
Please.
But this is Alexander Squire. I don't know if he introduced himself.
I did not.
Yeah, this is Alexander. And Alexander is responsible for getting the photographs here, unpacking them, and making this presentation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. So being somewhat of a photographer myself, but growing up in the time of digital imagery, essentially, when everything was switching to digital, I've only had an opportunity to work with film and like a full format camera maybe once in my life. But I remember that, especially in scenes where there's low light, you had the exposure time was longer generally, and you had to hold this larger mechanical object still during that time. And a lot of the shots they seem to be like during shooting, during filming. And I'm wondering how difficult that was, or how you were able to manage like both staying still and be the actual exposure that you needed to capture the information.
Yeah.
Or there were a lot that didn't work out?
No, it's interesting. Almost all the photographs that we could have hung 50 more, and they're all interesting photographs because what was happening around me was interesting. So it was hard not to see something that was kind of interesting and fascinating. I mean, Arlie Ermy is a fascinating person because he wasn't an actor, really. He'd been in one movie, Boys in Company C, playing a drill instructor, but he was hired by Stanley Kubrick to be our technical advisor because he was a United States Marine. And he was going to teach us how to march. He was going to teach us how to be Marines. And for those of you who don't know, a soldier is not a Marine. So don't ever confuse a Marine with a soldier. They're very different. A United States Marine is a United States Marine. So he was a United States Marine. And he put us through the movements. We shot the film backward. We shot Vietnam, and then we shot boot camp because we were going to have our heads shaved, right? So the guy, how many people have seen the film? Pretty much everybody. So okay. The guy who's in the helicopter shooting people, and I say, how do you shoot women and children? And he said, easy. You just don't lead them as much. And he's, get some. That guy is named Tim Colcheri, and he was our drill instructor. So Stanley Kubrick, this is really important. Are there any film directors here? No, one. Stanley Kubrick, contrary to what people think, he had an idea how he was going to shoot the film. He did, oh look, these windows are opals. These are like the windows that were on the set. There we go. Problem solved, right there. So yes, he pre-visioned the movie. Yes, he had an idea how he was going to shoot the movie. But this will surprise people that he didn't know where he was going to put the camera till the actors did the scene. That's surprising to a lot of people because they think that, he placed people and everything was the way that he said it. But he said, I can't put the camera if you don't show me how you're going to do the scene. So sometimes actors will say, I don't want to do it now because I don't want my performance to be wasted. I'm going to save it for when you're filming, right? I'm going to save it for the take. And Stanley said, why? You know, just how do I know where to put the camera if you're doing it half speed? Do I put the camera half speed? You know, while you're trying to figure out, like, okay, let me just stand here, because I don't know what to do if you're not going to do it the way that you're going to do it. That surprises people. Maybe not you guys. So Tim Colcheri was going half speed. He was supposed to be auditioning all of the kids in the movie that were going to be in boot camp, all those other kids in the boot camp. And so Stanley wanted to see them all on camera so he could pick them. And he told Tim Colcheri, go and do your lines, practice the scenes with those kids, and get those lines in your body so you don't have to think about them when you're acting. Because if you have to think about your lines, that's not a good place to be. You want to say something that is as natural as water coming out of a tap. That it should be second nature. And Tim didn't want to do that. He would do it. He'd say, I don't want to yell. I don't want to hurt my voice. And so he'd say, I don't want to do it anymore. And Lee Ermey, he'd say, I'll do it. I'll do it. So Lee Ermey would step in front of the camera with these kids and start saying those things. You know, you're the kind of guy that fuck a guy in the ass and not even have the goddamn common courtesy to give him a reach around. You know, he would do that and say that. And then Stanley started looking at the playback of the videotape of these people auditioning, and he'd see Tim Colcheri, who was going like, and then he'd get in front and start doing his thing, because he only knows one speed and one volume. And Stanley saw it, and he said, how could I have this guy when I could have this guy? So poor Tim Colcheri, because he was going half speed, got fired. And they hired Lee. Did you ever see All About Eve with Bette Davis? It was a little bit like Eve Harrington trying to take the job away from Bette Davis. And he succeeded. He's a little bit of Eve Harrington, bless his soul. But I mean, I'm so happy that he got cast, because it's extraordinary. He would have won the Academy Award if a couple years before they hadn't given it to Lou Gossett Jr., who was also equally good, an Officer and a Gentleman. But the way the Academy works, say, well, we gave it to a drill instructor 2 years ago. We can't give it to a drill instructor again. You know, that's the way it works. So Tim didn't, and Tim, because Stanley felt bad that he had fired Tim, he gave him the job as the door gunner in the film.
So, do you think, with the way movies are made today in a faster time frame, do you think that you could do this again on a set?
No. So I was in England for almost 2 years, working on well, not just working on the film, but there were. Lee Ermey got in a car accident at Christmas time, and we stopped filming for a couple months because he had broken his ribs, and obviously it would be very difficult for him to do all that yelling with cracked ribs. We lost a few days with him because of all the yelling that he was doing. His throat started to bleed.
Wow.
That's an interesting moment to talk to you about him for a second. Because people say, you must have been laughing all the time by the crazy things that were coming out of his mouth. And I said, yes, it was funny, but there was horror coming out of his mouth. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, he was a chain smoker, so you had tobacco, the smell of cigarettes coming out of his mouth. He had a lot of bad teeth, so he had a kind of... there's a word for it, halitosis and tobacco. He was drinking copious amounts of coffee. So, like, I'm not kidding you, like a gallon of coffee a day. So coffee, cigarettes, and halitosis. And then when his throat started bleeding, they gave him a steroid spray. So he was spraying steroids to soothe his throat, to reduce the swelling. So when he got in your face, And he's yelling, you had halitosis, coffee, cigarettes, and steroid spray in your face. And it was just fucking horrible. It was horrible.
So, contributed to your performance then, I guess,
yeah.
all of you sitting there.
You just hoped he wouldn't make a mistake and have to do it all over again. Yeah. He couldn't pull a punch either, so there's times when he'd slap me across the face or punch me in the gut. He'd punch me in the gut, and Stanley said, we got to do it again. I said, why? That was really good. He'd say, no, it looked like he missed you. I said, look at my face. It's all, no, I'd look like a miss. We got to do it again. So much so that all those scenes inside the barrack, when we got out on the parade ground, see, those are pictures that are not, I didn't give you the pictures. There's some really good ones on the parade ground. Vincent D'Onofrio told Lee Ermey, when he says he's got his rifle on his left shoulder, it's supposed to be on his right shoulder, and Lee Ermey gets angry at him, and he comes over, on your right shoulder, don't you know you're right from your left? Wham! And he slaps him across the face. What side of your face is that? Your right side, sir. Wham! What side of your face is that? Left side, sir. That Vince said, I saw Mathew get punched and slapped so many times in the barrack, I don't want to do that. He said, let's just slap me and let's get it over with. And Lee was really nervous about really slapping Vincent, and so he went to Kubrick and he said, he wants me to hit him. And he said, what? He wants you to hit him? Why? And he said he doesn't want to do it a bunch of times. He's just said, just hit him and let's get it over with. So Stanley said, okay, are you all right hitting him? He goes, yeah, I'm all right hitting him. And if you watch the film, next time you watch it, he slaps him so hard across the face, his cover, his hat, spins around on his head, and then he slaps him the other way, and it spins back around. Yeah, and I think maybe they did 2 takes, and it was over. I mean, he hit him so hard he could have knocked his fillings out of his cavities, his teeth. He really slapped him. Give him a good slap. So are there any service members here? Yeah, thank you for your service. And Marines are, yeah. Wow. You were a Marine when it was really rare to be a Marine. Wow. Wow, you're like a trailblazer. Wow, holy cow.
So with your, and I'm sorry, I set my phone aside so it wouldn't ring, and I have no idea what time it is. So I don't want to short y'all on questions, and we will get those. But with that extended time that you had, the 2 years, you had a lot more time on set. And
I don't think I answered your question.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm coming back to it. I was politely getting back
Oh
there.
my God.
What you answered was wonderful. It just
because there was so much time, that provided me a luxury of time that you don't have on normal film sets, was to have a relationship with a director, a filmmaker that you don't get the opportunity to have conversations, particularly about the ending of the film. That just wouldn't really happen on a film set today, because most movies are made in 4 weeks or 6 weeks. And so to have a camera on the set and also being an actor, unless the camera had something to do with my character, it would be something that would be inappropriate, because it would mean that I'm not focusing on the job that I'm supposed to be doing, which is playing the role that I'm supposed to be playing. So the camera would get in the way today. Unless I went to the set when I wasn't on the set, and I did it this year on Stranger Things. I wanted to use my Rolleiflex, but it was so dark on the sets. There's a new camera called, we talked about it last night. What's it called? Phase One. The Netflix rented me this incredibly expensive camera. I think it was designed to take photographs like from reconnaissance planes. The resolution of the camera is so high that it's just, it's crazy. But I used the Phase One, and I took pictures when I wasn't filming. I went and took pictures of my co-star, Millie Bobby Brown, who I think is just extraordinary. If there are any Stranger Things fans, yeah, so it's fascinating to watch her because obviously I've met Audrey Hepburn once in my life. I had dinner with her. She was an incredibly lovely woman. I never met Natalie Wood, or Judy Garland. And there were times when I'm working with Millie that I'll look away and I look back and I'm suddenly on set with Natalie Wood, and I turn away and I'm suddenly with these incredible actresses that provided us with so much entertainment she's a magical young lady, and I wish her nothing but the best. And anyway.
You mentioned having that relationship with Kubrick and talking about things that, in the plan for the film, Private Joker was killed at the end, and that evolved, and again with the idea of Kubrick as being the auteur and knowing everything.
Yeah. The
ending wasn't known.
No. So what in Gus Hasford, the movie is based on a book by Gustav Hasford, called Short Timers. The Short Timers was adapted by Michael Herr, who wrote, I think, arguably one of the, not just about Vietnam, but maybe one of the greatest war books ever written, called Dispatches. It's incredible. There's a line in the book. He was getting on the helicopter to fly to the city of Hue, and the pilot of the helicopter told Michael he shouldn't go on this trip. You shouldn't go to Hue. And he said, why? I'm a combat correspondent. I'm a writer, documenting about this war. And he said, because where we're going, there's no erasers on the pencils. And if you ever met Michael, you can see how deeply that experience scarred him. That's the thing about war, that we know about the loss of life, we know about the loss of limbs, and how people can be damaged physically by the experience of war. What we don't often see are the mental scars that people carry throughout their lives, and the traumatic impact that combat has upon people's souls. And Michael was clearly damaged from that experience, and we maintained our friendship until he passed. I was really happy that he wasn't a religious man, he was an atheist, but he found a place, and he wouldn't tell me where it was or what it was, because he said, I'm afraid that if I told you what it was, a bunch of movie stars would show up and ruin it. But it was a kind of, like, I imagined in my mind, because he wouldn't tell me what it was kind of a Buddhist retreat, an ashram kind of thing, where he as a man who had gone someplace without erasers, had found peace. So I'm so happy. But he wrote, so an article for Esquire magazine that I'm sure you can find online, which was expanded into a short novella about Stanley Kubrick. And because he's such a gifted writer, he really captured the essence of Stanley Kubrick, the way only a creative mind could. It's why it's so important to have artists in life to help us, because we've all had that experience when we're reading a book and the author's writing something and you go, oh, I know, that guy's writing about an experience that I had, and they found a way to articulate it through their words, through their ability to write, that makes you not feel so alone, that you go, oh, I understand that the guy's, he's just like me. And it's a wonderful thing to know that there's a commonality in us, and that there's somebody who's experiencing the things that we're frightened of, or the joys that we experience in our lives, that somebody was able to capture it and put it into words. It's a beautiful thing, and Michael was a great writer. He was a great writer. So in the book, Private Joker dies. And so I was the only person that was ever invited to go into Stanley Kubrick's Winnebago. That's the way they say Winnebago in England. They don't say, we call it a Winnebago. In England, they call it a Winnebago. And so I was so, I grew up in Utah. My dad was a drive-in theater manager. And I'm now working with this great filmmaker, and he invites me into his Winnebago. First of all, it's important that if you didn't know, he's a Jewish kid from the Bronx. He wasn't British. A lot of people think he was British, but he was just a kid from the Bronx who wanted to make movies. He moved to England because he found that the crews were better, the film crews were better, and he made up, I believe, this lie about not wanting to fly, so he wouldn't have to go to Los Angeles. Because here's the thing, if I have a script, if I have a movie script, and I want to get my movie made, and I send it to you to approve it, and you're a big producer and studio head in Los Angeles, you're going to be reading the script at your desk in a fancy office in Hollywood, and the phone's going to ring, and you're going to put the script down. Hey, what's going on? Yeah. Your secretary's going to come in. Maybe you're having sex with your secretary. So the script gets, put away again. Oh, it's lunchtime. I read a couple pages, then I go to lunch, and I come back. Maybe it's going to take 3 or 4 days for you to get through the script. And then you're going to also, because you're 6,000 miles from London to Los Angeles, some 6,500. You're that far away. So what happens when we read things, we start seeing the movie through the lens of your life, not the guy who wrote the script, but your life. You're going to interpret it the way that you see it. Stanley told me, he said, if I don't send my script to that guy, and I don't go to his office, but I invite him to come to London and sit in my living room and make you a cup of tea and sit down and read my script, he's going to read my script in my house, drinking my tea, and see my movie. He's a chess player, right? He financed his films playing chess. So when you play chess with a clock, you make your move, you stop the clock. So that's a little window into Stanley Kubrick and moving. So I'm on the set. Are you with me? Okay, good. I hope I didn't lose anybody. So, back in London, I'm at the most toxic place in the world, Beckton Gasworks. This is all like broken concrete and asbestos, and there is some blue chemical that they use to take coal and turn it into something called coke. And there was blue chemicals. There were about 28 known carcinogens in the soil, the air. I mean, it was the most toxic fucking place I've ever been in my life, and I'm sure we're all going to die of some horrible death from having filmed it. It's awful, awful, awful place. Stanley's Winnebago was parked on top of an unexploded 200-pound bomb from the Second World War because Beckton Gasworks was a target because it was providing energy for London, the coke. So there was a target. Over here you see. These were giant bins that Stanley had the legs blown off of. He thought that they'd fall apart, but they just fell over. And it's kind of incredible. That's Adam Baldwin. But, all right, now let's get back to the Winnebago. So, you with me? Yeah. Okay, good. Stanley asked me to come to his Winnebago to have a cup of coffee. And he asked me, do you like Kenyan? Kenyan people? Coffee. Do you like Kenyan coffee? I didn't even know they made it. Coffee grew in Kenya. And so I said, yeah, I guess, yeah, Kenyan coffee sounds great. So he starts making, I'd never seen, again, I'm a kid who grew up in Utah, and he had a French press. And I suddenly felt like I was with Albert Einstein doing mathematical, that he's putting Kenyan coffee in a French press, and he finally gets around to asking me, Jewish kid from the Bronx, you know him. What do you think of the end of the movie? I said, well, I think it's great, Stanley. It shows the tragedy of war. We train our young kids to go and learn how to fight in combat situations, and then they're presented with war, and it's nothing that they ever imagined, and this kid is, he starts running from these bombs that are exploding around him, and his thoughts drift back to himself as a child playing war with a little toy rifle. You see the little boy running, and then it cuts back to Joker running from real bombs, cutting back to the child playing war, cutting back to Joker running from real bombs, cutting back to the child pretending that he's been shot, to real Joker being caught, like the famous Kappa photo in the Spanish War, in the moment of death. And that's the end of the movie. I said, I think it's beautiful, Stanley. He goes, okay, keep thinking about it. Okay. I took my Kenyan coffee and I kept thinking about it. And so about every week, again, you know, I'm in England for almost 2 years. Have you been thinking about the end of the movie? Yeah, Stanley, I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. I love the end of the movie. And I find more justification for why I thought it was a good ending of the movie. Okay, keep thinking about it. Okay, I'll keep thinking about it. I keep thinking about it. And then one day, his assistant, Leon Vitali, there's a great documentary about Leon Vitali called Film Worker, which is a real insight into Stanley Kubrick and a real insight. I mean, it's a beautiful documentary, Film Worker. His assistant, Leon Vitali, knocks on my door. I didn't have a Winnebago. I had a little trailer. I wasn't this. It was Stanley Kubrick. You know, he had the big trailer. Stanley wants to see you in the trailer. Okay, what does he want to see me about? Yeah, I don't know. You're going to have to go see him. So I say, okay. So I go over to Stanley Kubrick's Winnebago, and I knock on the door, and he says, come in. And for the first time, I was the only guy that ever got to go into Stanley Kubrick's trailer, the only actor. There were 3 other actors in the trailer. I was immediately jealous. I was so jealous. I felt like my wife was in bed with 3 guys. And it was Arliss Howard, it was Adam Baldwin, and Kevin Major Howard. I don't have any pictures of Kevin Major Howard. Rafterman. And Stanley says, you know, Matthew, I've been asking you for months about the end of the movie, and every time I ask you, you say you like the end of the movie. I just asked these 3 guys about the end of the movie, and each one of them had a different ending. I said, oh. Really? And Stanley looks at Arliss Howard, played Cowboy, and he starts telling me his ending. He goes, you know, everybody thinks that I'm dead, and everybody thinks that you're dead. And then you hear this guy saying, hey, Joker, wake up, Joker. And I've got some bandages on my chest, and you see that I survived. I didn't die, and you didn't die. We're alive. And I say, hey, Joker, what a joke, huh? Fade to black. And Stanley is just, he had a habit of pulling on his beard. Like, what do you think of that? And I think, oh my God. And then Adam Baldwin says, so, like, you know, we're in Vietnam and we're all marching and we're singing the Mickey Mouse song, Fade to Black. You cut back to the United States and you're driving a gremlin, a little gremlin. I don't know why a gremlin, but he said a gremlin. I'm driving a gremlin, and you go into one of those little mini malls, you know, on the corner with a you know, Taco Bell and a dry cleaner, and you get your laundry out of the back, and you're not really paying attention. You go into the laundromat and you put your clothes down, you're getting your money, and you hear this guy say, hey, Joker. And you look up, and it's me. I look at you, and you look at me, and I say, Semper Fi. Fade to black. Fade to black. And I look at Stanley, and he's pulling on his beard. And Kevin Major Howard starts talking. I can't even hear what he's saying. I'm so angry. I'm so angry that this is the stupidest conversation I've ever heard in my life. And he finally, his lips stopped moving. I didn't like Kevin. I love him now, but I didn't like him then. I hated him. And he stops talking, and I looked at Stanley, and I said, well, Stanley, I guess we could film all three. We could film all three, and then you'd realize how stupid they are, and then we'd reshoot them like we have the rest of the fucking movie. And I couldn't believe those words had come out of my mouth. And I swear, in my mind, it was a cartoon. I wished I could grab the words before they reached Stanley Kubrick's ear and put them back in my mouth. And I felt like somebody had slapped me in the back of the head, and my ears got really hot the way they do, you know. And I picked up my helmet and my M16, and I thought, I just got to get out of here. And I left. I left this trailer, and I went back to my trailer, fully expecting that I'm going to get fired. And the next knock on my door is going to be Leon saying, Matthew, you know, get your things. We're taking you to the airport. You're out of here. And he came and he said, Leon, he did come and knock. He said, Stanley's on the set. He wants you to get over there quick. You know, we're ready to shoot. I said, okay. And I pick up my things, and I get there. Now, I told you this the other night. There's a word that they use in England that we don't use here, that you would get canceled quick if you used the word here. And Stanley, the nice Jewish boy from the Bronx, had picked it up. Cunt. Cunt. And the British use it all the time. It's a verb, it's a noun, it's used for everything, and it's used for your best friend sometimes. You know, it's my best cunt there. And I get over to the set, and Stanley goes, come on, let's go, you miserable cunt. I couldn't believe he called me. And so we film, and for the next, 4 or 5 weeks, he just keeps calling me a miserable cunt, and you fucking cunt. I can't believe you said that in my trailer, you fucking cunt. And am I offending anybody by swearing? Okay, good. If I am, it's a part of the story, and it's not me. It's and then so time goes by, and I keep trying to get on his good side. I'm telling him jokes, and he's not having it. And one day he comes and he starts telling me how we're going to film this, and we're going to film that, this is what we're doing. And have you been thinking about the end of the movie? And I was so tired of him calling me a cunt. I was so tired of him asking me that question. This is what came out of my mouth. Yeah, I have, Stanley. I have. He should live. He said, what? I said, he should live. He should go through boot camp and have the guy that he's trying to help get through boot camp stick an M14 in his mouth and blow his brains out all over the bathroom. He should live. He should see the drill instructor who's trying to teach him how to survive in a combat situation get shot in the chest and killed in a latrine. He should live. He should go to Vietnam and have the one guy that he knew from boot camp die in his arms. He should have to stand over a young Vietnamese girl who's bleeding to death, begging him to take her life because she's in so much pain. And he takes it. He should live, Stanley. Because that's the real horror of war. Having to spend the rest of your life with those images in your mind that you can't erase, like Michael Herr's pencil. He should live. And Stanley got really calm, and his eyes got really black. And he said, that's the end of the picture. And I don't know, I've talked to Leon Vitali about it, that he felt that the end of the film wasn't right. And I don't know if I helped by saying that to articulate the reasons why the end of the film would have been better to have Joker live than die. But that became the end of the film. And I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to work with Stanley Kubrick. You know, it made me a better human being. It taught me so much about life, and it gave me entree to the United States military that I didn't have before, and to honor those people who serve our country and sacrifice themselves. It gave me. My uncle was a B-17 pilot, and a few years later, I would do a movie called Memphis Belle, and I wore my uncle's dress uniform in the film. And I asked him, because he was a B-17 pilot, he flew 17 combat missions before he had his right arm almost taken off his body from anti-aircraft fire. And I said, Uncle Wilder, is there something I could do when I'm in the movie, you know, doing what you did in the warplane, a captain of a B-17 with 9 other crew members? Is there something I could do, you know, like flip a switch or something I could say? And he said, nah, he said, that's all horseshit. He said, but do me a favor, when you put that uniform on, don't disrespect it. And I told the kids I was working with on that movie about my uncle and his 17 combat missions, about my uncle and that experience that he had. And he said the one thing that he wanted us to do when we put our uniforms on was not disrespect those people who had fought in the wars and sacrificed their lives. And it changed the whole temperature of the movie, because we stopped thinking like in this movie, is that you, John Wayne? Is this me? That there are people who play soldiers, and there are people that are soldiers. And movies and sports are often compared to combat. You know, they say, oh, it's going to be a real war. It's going to be a real battle today. And it's a gross exaggeration to compare any aspect of filmmaking to war. War is the loss of life, while war is the destruction of life and nature. So yeah, there are things that happen in our lives, experiences that we have that change us, and that opportunity, those years that I spent with Stanley Kubrick working on his film, really changed me. And I'll say this really quick. I apologize because I know we want to ask some questions. If you look at Stanley Kubrick's, I don't know how to say this word because I'm not French. Oeuvre.
Sounds right.
Okay, good. I got it right. His library of films. There's a constant theme in each of his films, from Spartacus to Dr. Strangelove. I don't know, maybe not Clockwork Orange so much. That's a different one. But there is a theme that's in his movies. In 2001: A Space Odyssey, with an early man who discovers that by taking a bone, that he can crush another man's skull in, right? A weapon to kill another person. And then maybe the greatest cut that ever existed in film, that shows the brevity of life, and it shows the brevity of human existence on our planet. He throws that bone up in the air, and it goes spinning through the sky until it becomes a spacecraft traveling through space. That we've been here but for a moment, human beings. Our existence here, in the scope of the universe, we're like mayflies. I loved what somebody said at the party the other night, that we're monkeys with car keys. We're nothing more than monkeys with car keys. It's kind of brilliant. But if you look at Stanley's films, I find that there's a constant theme that if we keep using bones, if we keep using weapons, if we keep using nuclear bombs, like Slim Pickens riding the bomb down at the end of Dr. Strangelove. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when. That if we don't learn to find peaceful solutions to the problems that we face, if we keep slipping back into our early man selves and using bones to smash each other's heads in when we disagree with one another or we want something, that if we can't find peaceful solutions, our existence here will be but a mayflies, whose purpose is greater because they come here to have sex and die. All right.
All right, we have time for some questions, so if anybody has any, yes.
I have a question. When you say you taught churches, and you taught an ex-Mormon, and I'm curious if you're also...
The church is never going to let you go. Never.
And my other question is, I organize museum exhibitions. You also mentioned this show, you had shown it at some other place. Where was it, and do you plan to take it on the road? Because I do have some venues in mind.
Well, you're going to have to speak to Michael. He's my manager now. He's my artistic manager now. But yeah, the first big exhibition that had probably another 50 images and was in Rome at the Rome Film Festival. They put it in a gigantic venue, and they made even bigger prints. It was quite spectacular. It was very Italian. The presentation and the venue that they put it in. And then there was a Los Angeles exhibition, a Santa Monica exhibition. I don't say yes to everybody, because the reason I said yes, because I had that special relationship with Michelle. And this is a painful movie for me to talk about, regardless of the fact that I've had a good time here talking about it. It's weird that you should generally, I mean, think in your life how many films that you've seen that have relevance and are still part of the conversation, that so many aspects of the movie have become a part of our vernacular. You know, Get Some, Me So Horny, Me Love You Long Time, Alabama Black Snake, Tu Buku. There's so many, there was a hip hop song that, Ooh, Me So Horny, Me Love You Long Time, by Two Live Crew, just like on the heels of the film being distributed, that they wrote a song. So it is extraordinary that a project that I had the pleasure and the opportunity to work on is still part of the conversation, that the film continues to have a relevance today that it did when it was perhaps more relevance than then. So I like to do it places where I know that it will be appreciated, and that someone like Alexander will do a wonderful job presenting it in a beautiful space.
Well, I appreciate the fact that, because I think photography, I'm also a photographer, and I just see ideas. I always say it was with emotion. That's one of the biggest criticisms someone gave me early on. It's emotional. I'm like, that's criticism? That's the best thing you ever can see. You can see that you were emotionally connected to the work, and that's why it resonates, and probably why it also maybe not triggers, but the idea that you feel it. So those emotions come through. So it's evident in your work.
Oh, thank you.
Someone else? Yes.
I hope you don't mind a two-pronged question. You said your uncle was a B-17 pilot, so was my father. Was your uncle out of Molesworth?
Basingbourn, which ironically was where we filmed the boot camp. He flew out of Basingbourn.
The other question, you wanted to leave the production because your wife was giving birth and Kubrick wouldn't let you.
Yeah.
Could you expound on that?
Yeah, so did you get the book or the app? Or you read it someplace?
Malcolm McDowell tells that story.
Oh, Malcolm. Malcolm? Wow. He loves my book. Yeah. Yeah. He said, God, I wish that I'd thought of that. I wish I'd have kept a diary, because, I mean, imagine what his diary would have been like. Wow. But, yeah, so what happened was my wife has one leg shorter than the other and one shoe size smaller than the other. And so her hips didn't open to hold the baby. As you get bigger, the hips open up and support the child. And so because she was, I don't know, deformed sounds wrong, but I'm going to use deformed because I don't know what else to say. Because of that being ill-formed, the baby got stuck, and the doctor knew that the baby was going to. He didn't think that she was going to be able to go full term, and we'd probably lose the baby. And I didn't. My wife never told me that. She just I wanted to tell people that my wife was pregnant. She said, no, you mustn't tell people that I'm pregnant. You mustn't. I said, but it's such a beautiful thing. It's so great. No, you don't want it. She didn't want, because she knew. And she didn't want to have to explain to people if she lost the baby, oh, I'm so sorry. She didn't want that moment. She didn't want people coming to her and saying, I'm sorry you lost the baby. So she said, right now the baby is mine. When the baby comes in the world, you can tell people and celebrate the baby. So she never told me. I was like, well, what is going on with my wife that she won't let me? She wouldn't tell me. She's tough as nails, my wife. And we've been married 40-something years. Yeah, seriously. Yeah. So, to answer your question, the baby was stuck. She was going to have an emergency cesarean, and I ran to work to tell Stanley that my wife was having a cesarean at 11. It was scheduled for 11, and I got to work at 7, and I was waiting for Stanley to show up, and Stanley showed up late, and then it got later, and it was like 10 o'clock. And she was going to have the baby at 11, so I was just going to be able to leave this horrible place, Becton Gas Works, and be able to get to Wellington Humana Hospital. Do you know Wellington Humana? Yeah. I don't know which part of London it's in, but it's Wellington Humana. And to be able to get there, and Stanley finally rolls in, and I run over and I tell him, Stanley, my wife's having an emergency cesarean, and I need to leave to go be with her at the hospital. And he said, why? I said, what do you mean, why? My wife's having an emergency cesarean. I got to get to the hospital. And he said, yeah, but what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Go in the operating theater? Let me tell you something. She's going to, as soon as they cut her open, you're going to see the blood and you're going to pass out. I said, I don't know that. I said, I want to go to the hospital. My wife's having an emergency cesarean. He goes, let me tell you something about babies. He's giving me a lesson. Like, yeah, let me tell you something about babies. They don't need you. All they're interested in is eating and pooping and having their diaper changed for the first year of their life. They don't care about you. They don't care about the father. All they care about the mother. The relationship's all about the mother. They don't, no, you can't go. You can't go to the hospital. And I said, and I had a pocket knife, a little pocket knife. And I held it up and I said, Stanley, I'm going to cut my hand open. I'm going to cut my hand open right here in front of you. And I'm going to have to go to the hospital. You have a choice, Stanley. You let me go to the hospital, I'm going to cut my hand open in front of you. And he didn't move, but he physically moved back. It was like he floated back. And he said, okay, but come back right after. And oh, that's the part that really pissed him off, is I said, I'm not even filming today. I said, you're killing Dorian Harewood, who played 8-Ball. I said, you're killing Dorian Harewood. You're not going to get to me for 2 or 3 days. That's what pissed him off, because I was telling him how his production was going to go. He was like, no, I'm going to shoot him, and we'll be done, and we'll be ready to shoot you this afternoon. and the truth is, I came back with cigars as quickly as I could to pass out cigars, and I didn't work for a week. I gave the cigar to Stanley Kubrick, and I said, it's a boy. And he said, well, congratulations. What's his name? And I said, Bowman. He said, Bowman? Why? Yeah. I said, because his name's Bowman. Like 3 years ago, we named our children. We gave Bowman and Ruby. If it was a girl, Ruby. Before the child was ever conceived, the children had names. He goes, why do you want to call him Bowman? Call him, I said, what do you want me to call him, Stanley? Yeah. You're going to call him Jack. Give him a normal name. Don't give him some name that's like some weird, stupid name. I said, I can't believe you're calling my son's name stupid. They're like, what is wrong with you? Yeah. And then he would smile like that.
Was there a particular scene or segment in the film that was most difficult for you?
The whole of the boot camp was because normally what is boot camp? 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
12 weeks.
12.
At that time left.
12 weeks.
Yeah.
So I was in boot camp for 6 months. Yeah.
6 weeks.
I did get to go home and sleep with my wife. But you know, all of the training, all the climbing the ropes and going over the obstacles and the running and the marching, it was 6 months of boot camp, you know, and with a real drill instructor putting you through the moves. So but it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable. Sometimes I'd get chewing tobacco, and I'd never chewed tobacco before. Boy, does that make you stoned. I mean, so sometimes when we'd be marching, and Stanley say, "You're bouncing. Why are you bouncing?" And it was because I was stoned on chewing tobacco. I was, you know, but.
How do you think the dynamic of the film?
Save me.
Yeah, it's a very male film. You have two female characters, and how did that dynamic work with the crew? Three. There's three. There are three because the sniper at the end. You have two prostitutes and a sniper.
Boy, does that sound bad today.
Yeah,
Two prostitutes and a sniper.
There's roles for women in Hollywood. Yeah, the film, just the opening scene, you're listening to the opening scene thinking this could never be made again with the language that's happening with the drill sergeant.
Yeah.
How did that influence what was going on the set? Because it was a very...
I don't think it was never even discussed. It was, but now that you mention it, I think almost all of Stanley movies are just male driven. And that doesn't mean that he doesn't love women or want to exclude them. I think that, you know, you can, like, Ernest Hemingway said in order for him to be able to write a book, he had to go experience the thing that he was going to write about, whether it was bullfights or the Spanish Civil War? No, Spanish Civil War, that he had to experience it. So the point of view that you have is like what I was talking about before with the lens of your eye, the experiences that you have, they influence your life. So, you know, if each of us were given the same screenplay and told to go out and film it, that each of us get 5 people to make a movie, camera, sound, some lights, and a couple actors, each of us get that opportunity. That each of us would come back with something that would be similar because of the script, the story, but how you choose to see the scene, where you choose to put the camera, how you choose to edit it, how you choose to put music, those choices, those decisions are going to be based on the experience that you have in your life. Are you Latin? Latin, both of you. You know, growing up Latin, your perspective is going to be different than if you'd grown up in Utah. With, you know, the culturally, it's going to be different and significantly different. One of the greatest things that ever happened to me in a movie cinema was at my dad's drive-in in Orem, Utah. I was going to school with a lot of Navajo Indians that lived on the reservation, and there was a movie that Penn, Little Big Man. But who was the director? Arthur Penn. Thank you. The Arthur Penn made this movie, and I was sitting down on the ground with a speaker watching this movie. All the westerns that I'd ever seen up to that point always showed the perspective of white settlers being attacked by savage Indians. And this was the first time that the camera pivoted to indigenous people being attacked by U.S. military, killing their dogs, killing the women, killing the children. And Chief Dan George, who played the grandfather to Dustin Hoffman, this adopted boy that he brought into the tribe, they called themselves human beings. And it changed my life. This film, how important art is, you know, to our culture, to our lives. Atticus Finch says in Harper Lee's book that we never truly understand another person until we get inside their skin and move around in it. So that's what Atticus Finch was trying to do with the Tom that he's representing this African American who's been accused of raping a white woman. He gets inside the skin to try to understand who that person is. That's what we do as writers, that's what we do as directors, that's what we do as actors. We get inside the skin of those characters to try to understand them, to help you to see that person and open your heart and increase your ability to have apathy and understanding and forgiveness of another person. That's what art does in its greatest capacity, is gives us the opportunity to forgive and to see things that in a perspective, in a way that we had never seen it before, to understand another person's point of view. That's, evolution hasn't stopped. We're here right now. We can stop here. The whole machine can come to a stop. Or we can continue to evolve so that those words in our Constitution, we the people, really means we the people. It's a shared experience that we have with one another. And it's hard. Evolution is not easy. It was hard for me to get rid of my tail.
Do we have any other questions?
Yes, and then Emma. First.
Have you been to Vietnam? And no.
Thailand. Thailand's the closest I came. Cutthroat Island, which I dare any of you say it's a stupid movie. I'll wrestle you. I'll fight you. It's a good movie. It's better than the fucking Johnny Depp movie.
The young lady?
Emma, and then...
Quote that.
I was just wondering, how much did you find, like, over the course of this movie, your process as an actor, did that change at all through making this movie? And then did you take anything from the character of Joker home with you afterwards?
That's a good question. Are you an actor?
I would like to be, yeah.
Well, the word by definition, act, means to do. So start doing it. Read Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Outliers, about the 10,000, right? That you learn by doing, so find opportunities to do it, It's a good question. And so up to this point, I had done, 5 movies, Mrs. Soulful, Vision Quest, Birdie, Private School, which is not a good movie, but a lot of people really like it. And whenever they say, hey, I loved you in Private School, I think, are you making fun of me? It's a tits and ass, like Porky's exploitation movie. But I'm so happy that I did it because it's a long story. But I think I'd done about 6 or 7 movies up to this point. I was number 1 on the call sheet, Mathew Modine, number 1. And so when you work on a movie, you get a thing called a call sheet. At the end of the day, they come over, they give you a sheet, and it says, this is what we're shooting tomorrow. And so the reason they give you the call sheet is so you know what time to arrive to work, and you know what to prepare, so when you're on set, you're ready to shoot, right? On Stanley Kubrick's movies, a call sheet is just a suggestion of what might happen. In Italy, that's what the Italians call a stop sign. It's just a suggestion. It's funnier in Italian. It's just a suggestion. So we're months into filming, and as I said, we shot Vietnam first. And around this time, I started to think, we're not making any progress. We haven't completed, after 3 months, 1 call sheet. We hadn't completed anything. We're so far behind. And what happens, because of our egos, I started thinking, it's me. Stanley doesn't know what to do. He realizes he cast me. And he doesn't, and I'm the person who's failing him. It's my fault. And I was out in a field, that field, with the grass, the tall grass, and I was walking around going like, I don't know what to do. How do I fix this? And I see Stanley in a Jeep. He had a Land Rover, and he was driving, and I said, oh shit. And I hid because I didn't want him to see me. And he turned and he started driving straight over toward me. And I act like I dropped my contact lenses or something. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just messing around. And, and he says, jump in the Jeep. I'll give you a ride to the set. I'm ready to shoot. I said, no, it's okay. I'll walk. And he goes, no, jump in the Jeep. I said, no, it's okay. I'll walk. And he goes, what's the matter with you? And I said, I'm sorry, Stanley. I don't know how to play this part. And I don't know what I'm doing. And he turned off the Jeep and he pulled on his beard and he looked at me and he said, look, I don't want you to play anything. I just want you to be yourself. Okay, Stanley, yeah, just be myself. And he goes, jump in. I said, no, it's okay, I'll walk. And I wrote in my diary that I knew that the important part of what he wrote was to be. To be. And because the difficult thing in life, I understand, is for us to accept who we are. That, we always hear that each of us are unique and we're individuals and that we're all different than one of our. It's true. But what we're not comfortable with is who we are. And if we can be comfortable with who we are and how unique you are and how different your circumstances are, embracing your Latina culture and the experiences that you've had in life make you different than me. But people are frightened of that. And the people who exploit that are the people who sell things. Advertising, a great book by Jerry Mander, which I always wonder if it's a fake name because of gerrymandering. But he wrote a book called 4 Arguments for the Elimination of Television. It's a great book. But advertising is, and there's a really wonderful movie with Richard E. Grant called How to Get Ahead in Advertising. Terrific movie. That people that make advertisements go to school and study psychology to understand the vulnerability that exists in each of us and how to exploit that vulnerability. So they make a television commercial where a young girl has a pimple on her head and she's worried, and they, without any language, show her friends going, oh my God, she's got a pimple on her face. And they don't want to be with her because she has a pimple on her face and her life is a tragedy. Oh my God, I've got a pimple on my face. Nobody likes me. My life is going to be destroyed. But she finds this magical cream that she puts on her pimple and it dries up. And then the next time you see her, she's with all her friends and they're happy and everything's wonderful. It's horseshit. It's horseshit. It's a pimple. It's a pimple and we all get them. Sometimes on our butts. And so to be is a really important thing. That if you took something away from this conversation today, I hope that you would all embrace how important it is to be yourself. Henry Miller wrote a book called Paint for Yourself and Die Happy. Because he was always trying to paint like somebody else. And he realized, like me, the foolishness if I tried to act like Marlon Brando, if I tried to act like James Dean, if I tried to act like Jack Nicholson. The reason that Jack Nicholson is interesting is there's not another person like him. And somehow he had the confidence to be Jack Nicholson and to embrace being Jack Nicholson, or Marlon, the courageousness of embracing who you are and being who you are is the hardest thing to be, becoming an artist and having a voice and trusting your voice, doing your sculpture and do you know what I mean? I don't think I can expound on any further, but I think that if you understand what I mean, I can stop talking.
I think we had one more question right over there. Yes, you.
Yes, sir.
So Lynn, quite a few movies as a cinematographer.
I did what?
Lynn's, you were a cinematographer. And so
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
you seem to, I mean, obviously that's Mathew Modine. That character in the camera, we know, but we don't know this other side, but we can see obviously you have a talent at a very early age. Seems like you stepped away from that. You're looking at jumping back in again.
Shooting my own films?
Or you find you can get someone else to do it in the
I taught myself how to edit too, and editing, it's you don't have to master everything. It's good to have an understanding of all the aspects of filmmaking so that you appreciate them. I think it's really important for actors to understand and appreciate what a director has to go through. All of the decisions, the costume department, the lighting department, the locations, how much time is it going to take you to shoot this? There's hundreds of questions that are asked of a director when they're making a movie that they have to have some kind of understanding or ability to answer. It's wonderful if you can hire a costume director and a makeup artist and a cinematographer that understands and has a shared vision, and then is also smarter than you, who can see something that you may have missed, or a detail, or a suggestion. You know what would be great is to tell this by putting the camera down on the ground and sneaking up onto the person to film them. So that collaboration, that's a wonderful thing about filmmaking, is it's probably the most collaborative art there is. It's incredible. So you want to surround yourself with other artists, and what Stanley did was kept the productions very small. I would say that he is the most independent filmmaker in the history of film. On our sets, there were times when there weren't more than 10 people on set. Stanley was oftentimes operating the camera. Doug Milson was his DP. This is Dougie Milson here. He almost disappears into this, but you always see him with a light meter because the light would change, and so Stanley would have him ride the aperture. So if a cloud was coming, you wouldn't have to cut because the light changed. You would just open the aperture up and continue filming. But I love shooting. I love holding the camera. I don't like digital photography because there's something about I shoot with 16 millimeter, and when you have that camera against your head and you hear the film going through the camera, it's money. And I grew up without money, and the first art teacher I had gave us a piece of paper, and it had a number on it, and he said that that's what you'll be graded on at the end of the semester, that what you put on that paper, that's what you'll be graded on. And so what it meant was you had to do a lot of preparation before you started drawing on that piece of paper, have some idea what it is that you're going to put there, because there was only that one piece of paper. So it was a great lesson in commodity and being prepared for something, that the preparation before you put that on the paper. So dreaming about the movie, dreaming about what it is that you want to accomplish before you get to the set. And then what I learned from him was letting the actors show you where to put the camera. In that documentary that I mentioned that his daughter made about The Shining, there's a great example of it where in The Shining, if you know the film, Jack Nicholson gets locked in the refrigerator by Shelley Duvall. And he's, open the door, Wendy, and he's trying to get out of the room. And Stanley was trying to figure out how to film it. And so he lies down on the ground, and he asks Jack, could you do it from there? And it's a really good frame. Could you find a way? He doesn't say he says, can you find a way to say the line and look down while you're saying it? That's a really good way of directing without telling somebody what to do. Can you find a way? Very kind. And so Jack found a way to do it, and it's an amazing shot in the film. Some of the best direction I ever got from Stanley Kubrick was something like, I do the scene, and then Stanley walk over, pull on his beard, and say, "You're not going to do it that way, are you?" It's a great direction. It's a great direction.
So we have time for about 2 more questions. Yes, sir?
The Mickey Mouse song at the end of the movie, can you talk about the significance of that and how it kind of came about?
Well, are there any Vietnam veterans here? No? One. Thank you for your service. My brother was in the United States Navy. He drove swift boats. He brought Marines up the river, like in Apocalypse Now. And my favorite story my brother told me about that was one of the Marines asked them, because there's I guess a 50 caliber gun on the back of a swift boat, and they, I forget what, there's some derogatory term that Marines use against people in the Navy, like sailor boy or swabby or something, right? And they say, what are you doing with that 50 caliber on the back of your boat? And my brother said, I use that to shoot you if you don't get out of my fucking boat when I tell you to. What was the question?
The song, the Mickey Mouse
Oh,
song.
Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse was a term that veterans from the Vietnam War used to describe a whole plethora of situations. This Mickey Mouse bullshit they called Vietnam Disneyland, and they couldn't wait to get back stateside to the big PX, right? Am I right? Am I doing good? Okay, good. And so Mickey Mouse was just kind of like part of the vernacular.
Was that part of the ending he was kind of talking to you about? How did that fit into it?
No, that was not part of it. That was always, what was going to happen in that march was when Joker died. What was going to happen that we didn't do because we had that discussion about Joker living was there were going to be mortars in the ground that would start to explode. And the voiceover was still about your thoughts drift back to Mary Jane Rottencrotch and the great homecoming fuck fantasy. And then the bombs start to go off, and the voiceover said, your feet tell your brain to pick your body up and to run from these bombs that are pursuing you. And that's when you start to see Joker as a boy, and Joker as a man, Joker as a boy, Joker as a man, and then his death. But the Mickey Mouse thing, the singing, I think it was part of the, I don't know where it come from, but the thing that's fun about it is that Stanley never asked Disney for permission to use it. He just did it. And we laughed about it because, once the film had come out, nobody ever stomped on the ground. No, he didn't get any letters from Disney saying, like, who gave you permission to use that song? Stanley and I just laughed about it because we were imagining the guys in the office at Disney going, did you give him permission? No, I never called. And everybody trying to run away from the responsibility. And what are we going to do? Because the movie's out, and you can't put that back in the jar. And so it was pretty funny. The thing that, because Stanley's so clever, and not a lot of things are left to happenstance, is what the words say. Who's the leader of the gang? If you think about American capitalism, and if you consider the fact that we've really moved from a democracy into a corporatocracy, where we have monopolies and these gigantic multinational corporations and I think we begin to see that at the beginning of the Vietnam War, and trying to understand the larger, different geopolitical circumstances of the Vietnam War. Who's the leader of the gang that's made for you and me? Who is marching coast to coast and far across the sea? M-I-C-K-E-Y, M-O-U-S-E. That it was somehow a kind of, for Stanley, maybe like a jokey way of talking about American capitalism and opening up Vietnam as a PX for selling Marlboro cigarettes and Coca-Cola. I don't know.
I think we have time for one last
Maybe.
question. Yes.
I don't know. What am I most proud of? I'm alive. I'm still alive. I'm happy about that. I don't know. I think, I'm so blessed that I met this girl. I was a chef at a restaurant, dreaming about being an actor and saving money to go to acting school. And one of the hardest things about being a young actor is you say, I want to be an actor. And there's no foundation to it. It's just like you say you want to be an actor. It's not like if you say I want to be a musician and I want to be in a band, you'd buy a guitar and start practicing and get your chops until you could get in a band and be in a band. That if you wanted to be a basketball player, you'd practice basketball and get that muscle memory so that you could do it, so that you could get on a team. Acting, it requires so many people to be able to do it, to participate. You need a space. You need other actors. You need some things to be able to do it. Otherwise, you're just like a crazy person standing on a corner talking to yourself. So when I was saving my money, I met this girl named Carrie, and she said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to be an actor. And she said, oh, you'll be very successful. And I started working like 6 weeks later. I believe with all my heart that the most powerful thing in the universe is our thoughts. And if we were more careful, we should be more careful what we think, knowing that how powerful our thoughts are. That I believe that we went to the moon because Jules Verne dreamed about us going to the moon in the deep down into the ocean in submarines because somebody first previsioned it in science fiction and made it science fact. That we might be on the cusp in this evolutionary process of discovering that the fastest thing in the universe is not light, but thought. That the fact that the placebo effect works, the fact that I can give you a pill and tell you that this is going to solve that problem, and it does, proves that the placebo effect works. In New York City, every year, John Lennon and Yoko Ono, and Yoko continues it to this day, to make a billboard that says, war is over, if you want it. The important part of that statement is, if you want it. So, what did you say?
That's faith.
Faith. Yes, sir. If you want it. I want it. And I will do everything in my peace and in my power to help achieve it. Yeah. And maybe the first step in achieving that is the ability to forgive another person. Forgiveness is grace. And I thank you for yours for coming today. And I appreciate having this opportunity to share these ideas and these words. I apologize for my language if I offended any of you. The next time I'll tell you about this movie I made with a chimpanzee when I got raped.